When I was a little boy, I experienced childhood trauma. Stay with me as I share some of my story and some basic information about childhood trauma to help raise awareness. Hi, my name is Mark. I'm a pastor and professional counselor who also struggles with anxiety and panic. Welcome to my channel. Less than stressed. In today's video, we're going to divide it up into three parts. I'm going to first talk about a little bit about my life before my childhood trauma. And then I'm going to talk just a little bit about my childhood trauma because we're actually won't have enough time to talk about the whole story. So we'll do a part 2 of this video. And then I'm going to give you some basic information about what childhood trauma is, and just to help you to give you some information and kind of raise awareness with that. So if you're ready, let's do it. So some of my first memories that I have before the trauma are actually pretty good, I'd have to say. Uh, I remember my mom taking me out to the backyard while she did the laundry. And I don't know, it was like 2, 3 years old, I'm not sure, but I just remember being kind of amazed by everything. The grass, the flowers, the plants, even some of the bugs, except for the spiders. I was scared of those. Didn't like those very much. But yeah, I was really astonished by all of that. I remember my mom taking me downtown Scranton to the bank that she used to go to, and right next door there was like this little monkey bar park kind of thing you can climb on. And I just really remember this. It was smooth stones everywhere in it, and when you walked on it, they'd make this really crunching sound. I have that good memory. I remember my mom taking me to the grocery store, and believe it or not, I remember being put into the cart. You know, this little front cart where you put your little legs in. I remember that. You're not gonna believe this one. I do remember getting my diaper changed, but only one time. So that's, yeah, I remember that. And I remember having a birthday party. Uh, might have been my fifth, fourth, I'm not sure. I remember my aunt, well, who was my mom's sister, came over, my two cousins. One was a little bit older than me, one was a little bit younger than me. And it was my mom. And my mom had baked a yellow cake with chocolate icing and those very colorful sprinkles. So, yeah, I have all those good memories. Now, some of you might be asking, well, what about your dad? And my dad, he was a pipe fitter, so he worked away a lot. The only time he really was home on the weekend, so I didn't see him much during the week. So most of my early memories were with my mom. As I got older, I started doing more things with my dad, like fishing and that. But these are I'm talking about like, well, 2, 3 year old, 4 year old kind of memories, so pretty young. So yeah, so hey, overall, pretty good. So now let's talk about a little bit of my trauma experience. Now, before I do, there's two things I want to share. The first one is it's going to be mostly surrounding my mom. So I'm going to be talking about her and what she did in front of me while intoxicated. And really, what I want to say is that, ultimately, my mom, she was a good person. She had a good heart. She was very giving. But she struggled with mental health issues. So that really impacted how she raised me, because she unfortunately chose alcohol to use as her self-medication, as her way to self-medicate. And unfortunately, that led to a lot of poor decisions on her part when it came to raising me. And the second thing I want to mention is this: I want to give you a trigger warning, because I'm going to be talking about alcoholism, emotional neglect, and in the second video, I'm actually going to be talking about a person's attempt at unaliving themselves. So that's not coming up in this video. So just this video, alcoholism, emotional neglect. So I just say this because if this triggers something negative in you, it may be best to fast forward this part and not watch it. But it's not too bad. So I think you'd be okay. But I just want to put that out there. So a little backstory there. When I was a teenager, I remember my mom telling me that at like 35 years old, she had a nervous breakdown. Now, she was born in 1940, so when she was 35, I would have been at least a year and a half. So I don't know at what point at 35, but that puts me at about a year and a half. And I don't know when my mom started drinking alcohol, but I do remember when I was a lot younger just being upset that my mom wasn't home at night because I guess she was out and I was fussing at my grandmother because she was watching me. So just, bits and pieces there. But regardless of the timing, I do remember the first time that my mom did something that made me feel unsafe. I'm not sure how old I was at this point, but I remember eating dinner and my aunt was there again with my two cousins and my mom and me. And I think we had fried chicken that night. My mom made it. So went, pretty good night so far, but I remember we had dinner and then sometime after dinner, I don't know what I was doing. I was doing something, but I heard this thump out in the kitchen. And when I went to go check it out, I saw that my mom had fallen on the floor. She was like lying on the floor. There was the kitchen, but also her bedroom was connected to the kitchen. So kind of lying on the floor between the kitchen and her bedroom. And I didn't know what happened, but I know that this was the first time I've seen her lie on the floor like this. And I was very, very scared. That's what I remember, just being very scared. Now, did I think my mom had a medical emergency or was dead or something? I have no idea. I have no idea what I thought. I was just very, very scared. That's what I was feeling. So I do remember she did open her eyes and did get up, but again, still have no idea why she fell. I do remember at some point in time, whether it was probably that night, my aunt was saying that she just was doing that for attention, which was possible, because my mom would do stuff like that. But I mention this memory because, again, this was possibly the first time that her mental illness would have negatively affected me. So really, from there, the memories keep kind of getting a little worse. Now, the next batch of memories I have is basically me going to kindergarten, or I like to say kindergarten, whatever. I don't know what it is. Well, I remember crying my first day of kindergarten after my mom left. I remember that. I also remember that, I settled in, started doing the work, so that was no problem. But so we would have kindergarten. I had afternoon kindergarten, so that would be like from 12 to I think 3 or 3:30 where I was. And so um, what happened with me was that my mom was usually late picking me up. And I knew she was late because I would slowly watch the students leave or the students get picked up by their parents. Right? So I would be like inside the hallway there watching the kids leave. And then the next group to leave would be the teachers. Right? And they would start leaving. I would still be there. As a 5-year old, I really didn't have the capacity to understand why she was late. But I do remember how I feel. I was feeling very uneasy and very anxious and even a little bit scared because I didn't know if I was going to get picked up or not. So, uh, yeah, I had to stay in the school. After the teachers left, the principals would leave. And where I would wait would be right kind of next to the principal's office. So I see them leave. And if I was there late enough, uh, I would watch the cleaners come in and start cleaning the classrooms. Now, to be clear, I was never left there overnight. I was never completely forgotten. But, there are times where I was probably waiting 30 minutes to an hour, maybe longer. I don't know. So, where was my mom? And why couldn't she pick me up on time? Well, for one thing, I knew is that my mom didn't drive a car, didn't have her license, so she either had to get a ride or she had to call a cab and get a cab. But so that would take time to get to places. But number two, real reason really is because she my mom would be at one of the local bars and she'd kind of lose track of time, right? I can remember many times when my mom would pick me up from school and she would just simply take me to the bars with her instead of going home. Now, I say this jokingly now. It took a while to get to this place, kind of tongue in cheek, but I say this that I had been to just about every bar in the south side of Scranton before I was 7 years old. Sad, I know, but it's kind of funny now. But anyway, I never liked the bars. I always wanted to go home, and I'm very lucky, and nothing bad ever happened to me. You know, and it was at the bar where I found my love of kettle chips and candy bars. Unfortunately, sometimes that would be dinner. But yeah, nothing ever bad happened to me, but it really was a sad time, especially as I look back on it. Now, here's something that I wonder, maybe you're wondering it too. Why didn't anyone ever like call the police or the CPS on my mom, the Child Protective Services? And why did all this keep going on? Well, it was the late 90s and early 80s, and I can say that things, I guess, were very different back then, especially when it came to childhood neglect and abuse. A whole lot different than it is today, for sure. Now, there's a lot more to my trauma story, and but for the sake of time, and because I want to make these videos informative for you and helpful, we're gonna save the rest of my story for part two. And yeah, it's gonna get a little worse, but it'll be okay. So we'll do another trigger warning if we need to. So let's move on, and we'll save the rest of the story for part two. Let's move on. Let's talk about what childhood trauma is. I have it written down so I can read it for you. A couple official definitions. So let me just read it for you. Two things. Childhood trauma refers to distressing, threatening, or neglectful experiences during one's formative years that deeply impact emotional, mental, and physical well being. In a shorter definition, we also would say that childhood trauma generally stems from intensely threatening or harmful events that disrupt a child's sense of safety. So that's really the key thing is these negative events that occur that affect a child's sense of safety. And I surely had a lot of those. Childhood trauma is also referred to as adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, ACES, right? And according to the CDC Kaiser study on ACE, there are 10 primary types of adverse childhood experiences and traumatic events, and they're usually classified into three main categories. You have abuse, you have neglect, and you have household dysfunction. So we're going to go through each one of those real quick. So under abuse, you have three main types of abuse. You have physical abuse, which if I were to read it, says intentional physical harm, such as hitting, beating, or burning a child. Oh Lord. You have sexual abuse, which is any non-consensual sexual activity or exploitation involving a child. And then you have emotional slash psychological abuse, which be like sustained physical aggression or non-physical aggression rather, yelling, name calling, including humiliation, manipulation, threats, or severe criticism. So if you're a lot of that kind of stuff, very common. So that's abuse. The second category is you would have neglect. And two main types. You'd have physical neglect, which would be a failure to provide basic necessities like food, clothing, shelter, or medical care. And then you'd have emotional neglect, which is a failure to meet a child's emotional needs for affection, nurturing, or emotional support. That was a big one that I dealt with, emotional neglect. And then the third category would be household dysfunction. And in there, you'd have a number of things. You have domestic violence, which is witnessing violence or abuse directed at a parent or a caregiver. I've seen that. Substance abuse, when you're living in a household individuals who struggle with severe drug or alcohol abuse, mental illness, right? Having family members in the home who suffer from severe untreated mental health conditions. You also have parental separation or divorce, right? There's chronic stress that occurs when a sudden separation or divorce occurs there, and an incarcerated household member, one or more of your caregivers and members serve time in prison. I've seen all of those, but there is a test for adverse childhood experiences you can get online. See how many you actually went through. If you maybe some of these rang true for you. Anyway, I'm hoping that this information about childhood abuse was a little bit informative to you and maybe help give you a little awareness and give you something to think about. So I actually have a graphic here that lists all 10 adverse childhood experiences. Feel free to screenshot it and use it for a reference. I want to say this: if you suspect or know that a child is being abused or neglected, you can report your concerns to the appropriate authorities in your state or country or wherever you're at. In the US, we have something called the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline, and it provides state specific information on how and where to report suspected child maltreatment. So you just have to call that, and it'll tell you where in your state you can report. So it can be reached. Child Help can be reached 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and it has a toll-free number. Let me give you that number. It's 1-800-4-A-CHILD, or basically 1-800-422-4453. So if you're a teacher, a parent, an adult, and you see some childhood um, abuse, you're a mandated reporter. You want to report that. Don't let that go. So, all right. Thanks for watching. So that'll do it for today. But like I said, be on the lookout for part 2 of this video. I'm going to talk more about my experience and more information that will be helpful to you. But until I see you again, take care of yourself and have a blessed day.